feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer!
I don't care what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the
Call
Cowboys.
this college rule!
Welcome back, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. Dom and Chris here, and before we begin, as always, we are recording down here at Engle Studio in Tucson, Arizona, and they're here for all of your audio needs here in town, as well as, hey, go follow us on our social medias. Let us know in the comments, like, follow, share, watch, subscribe, everything. Just, we're putting out quality content, so join us. Join us and have a good time.
Yeah, definitely.
And today we got a great episode. We've mentioned him in a few episodes before. We've never done a special one on him.
Yeah, well, we had a couple of talks about him because we've done some things with what's happened to him in baseball. We're talking about Keith Hernandez.
I'm Keith Hernandez.
Newman comes in, Keith Hernandez. We're going to make these references all day.
A second spitter, Chris.
Oh, so let me tell you about this magical loogie.
Oh, my God. Keith Hernandez, born October 20th, 1953 in San Francisco, California, and grew up in the surrounding areas of San Bruno and Pacifica.
Yeah, so kind of moving around the same areas throughout his childhood.
I had an older brother, Gary, who also played baseball. His dad, John, was a firefighter by day, but Keith always had, I don't know if it was a joke or not, but his vocation was baseball.
I was going to say, because he did play with some pros back in the day, and he was what I would think of like the Field of Dreams kind of baseball guy, where they're I heard you can work during the day and play at night, or whatever, you know what I mean? So it was like, that was my thought of what his dad was like.
His dad was, he was in the Dodgers and Cardinals systems. He was a big Cardinals fan.
Yep.
His minor league career ended up getting cut short because he was hit in the head by a ball, which is like, now he wants his sons to live out his dream as a baseball player. He had mentioned that him and his brother, his dad helped him do it, obviously. They would set up almost like corn cobs, like the Wainers in the garage. I don't know if you read anything about that. Did you?
Little practice with them, and
with the tire, and they would use a rope with a tire, and they would study each other's swings. And they would tie it around the tire based on where they wanted the tire to go as far as the strike zone and what to swing at. So, like, they were doing this at a very young age.
Yes, and to say his father really shapes his hitting, he even does it later in his career.
Yeah, he does.
Which is so crazy, where he'll watch him in games and be like, you're turning your hips too much.
There's sometimes where you're like, that is a really good dad, and then there's other times where you're like, obsessed much?
Yes.
I mean, they sent his mom, Jacqueline, to the game. Her job at the games wasn't to be the team mom. It was videotape them while they're hitting.
Yeah,
so
seriously.
they could
study tape.
Goes to high school there in the Bay Area. Cappuccino High School, I believe that's what it was.
That's a San Francisco high school name.
It is. Oh, it so is. He sat out his entire senior year, though.
I was going to say, he was a star athlete, but I read somewhere where it said it was like, no, but he was like a baseball player. So he was in these other sports. And the fact that he sat out his whole senior year, and the only thing I saw about it was he got into it with the coach.
Yeah. Well, apparently because his dad was his coach all through youth baseball. And his dad had like a ton of hang-ups about other people coaching him.
Yep.
So his dad sided with him on this.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, his dad would ride him pretty hard as far as, his performance and critiquing him. But he stood with him on this one.
And he felt like he was maybe teaching him wrong, like how to do things wrong, and it's harder to unlearn something. That's where I think his dad was coming from. And they were like, we don't care about high school baseball. You're gonna go on.
Like, someone will draft you. Don't worry if you don't play your senior year. Trust me, someone will. I did want to add, though, in high school, like most of our athletes, though, he was the starting quarterback. He was a guard on the basketball team. Basically, there was a good story about how he had a chance to break a points record, and he didn't end up doing it. He just passed it off, and his dad got super irate at him. But he's a baseball player. He's a baseball player first. Growing up with a father who's giving you baseball quizzes in the car. And that's the other thing, and we'll get into later. One of the smartest baseball IQ players of his era.
Yeah.
In terms of knowing what to do at exactly every single moment on the field, being a very good team leader.
Well, you see it because a lot of the great defensive players, they have so much situational awareness, and I feel like he was just always thinking about baseball and baseball situations since he was like a kid. So he's just like, oh, this is a reflex for me.
This is when we were in the station wagon on I-5, everyone. Don't worry about it. I'm 5 steps ahead. So what do you do if you're 6 foot, 180 pounds, coming out of high school, and people want, I mean, granted, he got drafted low.
Well, he went to, I thought it was interesting, he went to JUCO for a year.
Yeah.
And then I think it's because he was just like, I didn't even see if he played baseball for that.
No, he did. Literally, he just went to JUCO to wait for the draft
to bang chicks.
Well, I mean, JUCO chicks, they're down to do anything.
And so you're right. He literally, and this is what I thought was crazy, which is one of these things that you find out when we do this research. You're like, oh, he was drafted 783rd.
Yeah,
the last player to be drafted that year.
42nd round. Mm-hmm. I mean, we're not Mike Piazza yet, but this is one of the greatest draft steals probably in Major League Baseball.
Yeah, seriously.
This is pick 199 with Great Satan in the NFL.
Well, I wonder if his dad had some connection to the Cardinals, and he was like, you should come check out my son.
I think they probably already knew who he was before his senior year of baseball.
Okay.
And my assumption is they already know his dad, and his dad does know people.
Yep.
Is that we don't have to tell anybody about this guy, right? And we don't have to invest. It's like when the Blue Jays scouts saw Dave Stieb pitch, how he was the only guy, or they were the only people to see him pitch. They were like, he's just a middling outfielder. But no, this guy can hit. But let's keep it on the down low.
Well,
but they reward him like he's a much higher picked prospect with his signing bonus. Mm-hmm. He got a $30,000 signing bonus, which is not something.
That's like a first 2 rounds.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, you're right with this being a steal from the Cardinals, and it worked out.
So, in 1972, he's sent to St. Petersburg in the Florida State League. I don't know if you read anything about this, but do you know why they sent him to Florida?
No.
So, they have 2 single-A ball clubs. They have one in Florida, and they have one in California. Mm-hmm. They sent him to Florida because they didn't want his dad involved.
Oh, yeah, to make that separation.
So his older brother went to the California League, and they were fine with it because he had a little bit better. His brother was a lot more easygoing and had a different relationship with his dad. Mm-hmm. But they were like, I think for his development, let's just keep him in Florida.
That makes sense.
Yes, I'd read that in his biography that just came out.
Oh, cool.
So, yeah. So he played, actually by the end of the year, he was doing so well in 72. He was sent to AAA to finish out the season there.
I was going to say,
that was cool.
And they literally, I saw that where they literally promoted him up. And when he got to AAA, they were like, oh, he's hitting 330.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of progression where you see it there. It's such a obvious sign that you're like, oh, this is going to be our first baseman for a decade.
Well, and he's such an interesting player because he hits for average.
Yep.
He walks, so he gets on base a lot. He gets a lot of extra base hits in terms of doubles, but as a corner infielder where you expect tons of power, he has power line to line, but he's not. I don't think once in his MLB career did he hit over 20 home runs.
No.
But he's just a consistent contact hitter.
Very precise contact hitter. And with the tire growing up, I bet he really knows where to pull the ball. He's just like, ooh, I'm putting it right there.
Knows where to pull a lot of things.
You know what I'm talking about.
Because he's Keith Hernandez.
He's Keith Hernandez. Oh, I'm rounding second and making it to third.
Let me just say this for those people at home. He knows exactly the first thing about getting to first base.
I'll tell you what, I think one of the best lines is Elaine going, I'd look at the base running coach because I don't think he's waving you in.
Oh, what a time to be alive, Chris.
God.
Keith Hernandez.
Just smoking cigarettes.
Oh, man. Did you see? I read that he never smoked cigarettes at home. The only time he smoked cigarettes were when he was in the clubhouse.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's such a weird thing. I would think, I don't know if he was necessarily a chain smoker, but he would smoke cigarettes, but it was only at his place of business.
With the boys.
That's
right.
So
he gets up to AAA in Tulsa, the old Tulsa Oilers.
Yep, in 73 because he starts in Arkansas and then moves up.
Yep.
They win the league title that year. The Cardinals, you were kind of off those Kurt Flood years, so they're starting to rebuild. But they have a lot of good young talent starting to make a nice
starting
push.
to come through.
In that season, they won the league title, hit 278, 26 doubles, 3 triples, 8 home runs, 77. That was the other thing. He's a great run producer.
Yes.
Which is why you keep someone in the lineup.
Throughout his career, he has and clutch RBIs. That's something else.
Oh, we'll talk about some clutch ribbies.
It's such an amazing thing where you want guys to step up in the biggest situations, and he does.
Definitely. So in 74, he spends most of the season in Tulsa.
Yep.
Which, 21 years old, like, ready to go. Like, you're still developing. 351.
Yep.
They win the league title again, 14 dingers and 63 RBIs, but he's not allowed to participate in, I believe, the championship because August 30th, 1974, he makes his major league debut.
They call him up. The Cardinals are like, all right, you're ready.
Yeah, you're ready to go. 42nd round draft pick. Do you know who he replaced? Do you know whose shoes that he filled?
No.
Joe Torre.
Oh, really?
Joe Torre, he won a batting title for the Cardinals. Yeah. He was,
oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that was in his book. He had talked about that was like the old guard leaving. So like a great story with Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, another one who was kind of towards the end of his career. But like as he's coming in, he's learning from all these different baseball people. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, like a student. That was what I got the most out of the biography. Is like not only is he a student of the game, he's someone who appreciates the history, just loves baseball,
and
like a baseball junkie.
Almost. And the experience that they have, because sometimes people like turn their nose up at it, like you're out of here, and he was probably more just like, please tell me everything.
In the Gibson story, he said. He was on the bench with him, obviously, and he was sitting, and he got to the 7th inning, and he had to get up and pee, so he left Gibson sitting there, and he came back, and he's like, God damn it, rookie, why the hell did you just leave me? I'm trying to teach you everything about this game, and you went to the bathroom?
That's great.
It was pretty fun. Lou Brock said stuff into the extent, like, because Keith was very into the science of hitting, and Lou Brock's like, it's just you, the pitcher, and the ball. And once the pitcher throws the ball, it's just you and the ball.
That's great.
And he's all hit 3,000 hits, so obviously there's something there with Lou Brock.
Yeah.
Anyway, his first series is actually against the Giants in San Francisco. I don't know if you saw that. His family came out. In 14 games, he hit 294. In 75, though, he starts slumping a bit.
Well, his batting, and you see this with young guys coming up where major league pitchers are just that much better. So he has to adapt. And he 75, 76, he really has not found his bat, but is still one of the best first basemen defensively.
Yeah, and I think the thing with that is they were trying, he had talked about it in his book, they were trying to tinker with the swing.
Oh, yeah. That'll mess you up. Yeah.
Was trying to kind of tinker with him where they were telling him just hit everything the other way, and his dad had taught him, go with where the pitch is.
Yeah.
And then he was kind of tinkering with his stances. So it took him a decent amount of time to really not necessarily adjust to the difficulty, but just get himself right.
Yeah. Well, because you see throughout his career, he bats like 300, but in this early section, if he hadn't improved his batting, I don't think he would have stayed a Cardinal. You know what I mean?
It is hard to justify keeping a corner infielder in the lineup who is not hitting 20-plus. I mean, his RBIs are fine, his doubles are fine, but you know, the way that baseball was thought of at the time, that is very hard to do.
Yes.
So he's sent back to Tulsa in 75, but from 76 to 78, the Cardinals are about a 500 team because they're like rebuilding.
They're rebuilding.
During that 3-year span, almost 1,500 at bats. So this is when he starts turning it on and getting it. It's 277, 33 dingers over those 3 years, 201 RBIs. What I found most interesting, he has an almost 1-to-1 walk to strikeout ratio.
I saw that
span. And he slugs .426, so his slugging is definitely helped by those doubles and triples, and won his first Gold Glove in 78.
Which
we're going to have a lot more of these.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that Cardinals defense in the early 80s with him and Ozzie Smith?
They said because you literally they were so good that if you hit one in the infield, it was such a,
Like if you're a pitcher and the ball hits the ground, unless it's on that Busch Stadium turf where it's like a chopper,
oh, yeah.
You're basically just like, oh, thank God. 79, he has a rough start. He's only hitting about 230 in April, but his manager, Ken Boyer, who was like a lifer for the Cardinals, he was, on the 60s World Series winning teams. He was with him in Tulsa as well, so he has a pretty good rapport with Keith. He had told him, I don't care if you're hitting 100, you're my first baseman.
Oh, man,
that's a vote of confidence from not only a manager you've known forever, but a player who is a Hall of very good player.
Yes.
Especially for the franchise that you're with. And holy shit, he makes the All-Star team for the first time and goes on a tear.
I was going to say his batting improves so much in 79.
It's like everything kind of fell into place for him this year. Hit 344, 48 doubles. And here's the other part of his game. I talked to you about run producing. He scored an NL leading 116 runs. For your first baseman?
Yeah.
Who hits third in the lineup?
Yeah.
Career high 210 hits, 105 ribbies, 930 OPS, Gold Glove. Unfortunately, he had to share the MVP with Willie Stargell. And when you go back, he was very diplomatic about it in his book. Let's just say
it was a unfair share.
It was an unfair share. Let's leave it at that.
Yeah, he really should have been the out-and-out MVP on that year.
But I guess that's what happens sometimes. 80 and 81, another two great seasons. Hit a combined 315.
Yep.
All-star.
I was going to say, this is where his batting average is always 300. He almost always hits like 40 to 50 doubles and then 90 RBIs. So it's like you were saying, he's not powering home runs, but he produces almost like he does.
But this is the kind of, I think 81 is Whitey Herzog's first year.
Okay.
So this is not a team where you need to hit big flies and go station to station on the bases. Keith, Ozzie Smith just stole second base. All we need is a single.
Yep.
Like one of those. Why don't you work
Drive it in
with the Beto?
Yep.
Just tap it in, Chris. Just give it a little taparoo there at the old Busch Stadium. He had led the NL in runs in 80 as well with 111. Won a Gold Glove and a Silver Slugger in 80 and a Gold Glove again in 81.
Wait a second. He's been winning Gold Gloves this whole time.
Well, I mean, you know a little bit about playing. You know a little bit about first base when you're winning some Gold Gloves.
That's right.
Like you know a little bit about getting there,
getting to first base,
playing there. And when you're scoring all those runs, you have a pretty good idea of what the base coach should and should not be doing.
I'm not driving him to the airport.
Roger McDowell.
Oh shit.
So in 81, though, I will say they're kind of screwed. I don't know if we've talked about this strike season before, I think, on this podcast, where what the baseball decided to do, because it happened in June and they came back, they just split the season in half. So if you won the first half, you were automatically in the playoffs. And if you won the second half, you were automatically in the playoffs. It didn't matter what your combined record was. The Cardinals in 81 had the best record in the NL East, did not make the playoffs.
Yeah.
So did the Reds in the West. It's unbelievable. But in 82, they pick up Ozzie Smith. Whitey Herzog's, their manager, and they're playing Whitey ball.
Playing Whitey ball. That's,
legging it out. Great defense, based on great defense, too.
Yep.
So he's got some guys there. Basically, he was the coach of all those great Kansas City teams in the 70s that just could not get over the Yankees hump. You got Ozzie Smith, Tommy Herr, and then Willie McGee in the outfield. God, they're covering a shit ton of ground.
Yeah, that's quite a team.
They go 92 and 70. Keith has the pop in the lineup for him, though. I mean, he's their big hitter. They outlasted Philly that year and Pittsburgh, or Montreal, who were the last, towards the end of the season, were the last 2 years NL East champions. Hits 299, 94 ribbies, career high 100 walks this year for Keith, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
He has an 810 OPS. Which is crazy to me. He had less than 10 homers and still had an over 800 OPS. I think that speaks to just what a pure hitter he was. And here's the other thing where you're like, oh, guys who can't hit home runs aren't like, they're not threats. He led Major League Baseball in intentional walks. When I read that, I was like, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like people feared pitching to him. Gold Glove.
Gold Glove again.
Goes to the playoffs for the first time, though, in 82. They draw the Braves.
Beat them up.
You know who their coach was?
The Braves on that one? No.
Joe Torre.
Oh, that's great. I didn't realize he went so quickly to coaching.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, this is when he was like relatively first starting. Though.
Yeah, it had to have been.
He goes, he hits 250 in that series, and they go to the World Series against the Milwaukee Brewers.
Against the Brew Crew.
And, if you want more information, we could talk about it in our Ozzie Smith episode. But this is like an underrated World Series as far as excitement. It goes all 7 games.
Yep.
It's Harvey's Wallbangers with the Brewers, who are all about hitting home runs, and the
against
Whitey Ball.
Well, that's what you get sometimes in baseball, where you literally get like 2 philosophies coming up against each other, where they're like, no, we're just gonna have them score single runs and just hit it as hard as they can. And then Whitey Ball's literally like, we're going to put Ozzie on second, and then you're going to drive him in, and then we might drive you in. Yeah.
Because you're a great base runner too, Keith. Don't worry about it.
He actually is. That's another thing.
Exactly. So the series, the way it goes, Milwaukee, after Game 5 in Fulton County Stadium, they're up 3-2 in the series. They have to go back to St. Louis, and Keith, in Game 6, says a dinger in the 5th off Don Sutton, Hall of Famer. They win 13-1, and then Game 7, Clu Haywood is actually starting the game for the Brewers, if you didn't know that.
Yep.
The real-life Clu Haywood.
The real one.
Cardinals are down 3-1 in the bottom of the 6th. They've pulled Clu, Pete Vukovich, if you weren't familiar, and put in one of Keith's old friends from his childhood. I don't know if you read about this.
I saw this. What was his name? Bob
McClure.
McClure. They literally played Little League together, which is such a great thing. And then played in high school, obviously not his senior year.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw that he literally had to face his childhood buddy in the World Series Game 7.
That's like something out of a Disney movie if one of them's a bully.
Yep.
But the bases are loaded. They're down 3-1, and it's a 3-1 count, and McClure throws a pitch, and Keith singles into center field.
Yep. To tie
the game. It's like, I'm Bob McClure. You may remember me from such postseason meltdowns as Game 7 of the 1982 World Series.
But this is what we were talking about, where he has clutch RBIs, and he has this ability to drive in runs that either tie or win a game.
The moment, when you look at his career and where he comes up in spots, the moment is never too big for him.
Yep.
Like, he may fail, but it's never too big for him.
Yep.
As far as, like, this is exactly where it's like, this is where my dad told me I was going to be when I was being potty trained.
Yes.
Like, come on. George Hendrick follows with a single to go up 4-3 and a couple more runs, and then wins his first World Series.
Yeah, Cardinals World Series champion. Now we
get into some strange times.
Now I want to talk about the way that they played over the past 2 years, because they had not what would be called performance enhancing.
They had some South American Angels, maybe?
I was going to say disco enhancing.
I like disco enhancing.
So he was essentially a coke addict for like 2 years. He said, I imagine he brought it up in his autobiography, where he was like, I played one game on coke. I have no idea what that game was.
Can I tell you, the book was from his childhood up until his MVP season.
Oh, interesting.
It was like describing his love of base. He didn't get into the playoffs, the World Series, anything. It was just like his journey from basically being born into finally kind of solidifying himself as an awesome major league player.
As a man.
As a man. Now you're a man. So, yeah, he wasn't the only member of the Cardinals.
No, it was
involved with hurting his nose.
Well, he was such a good player that normally they would not necessarily sweep it under the rug, but keep him as a player. But what I saw, the thing that Whitey said...
get into it.
He said he is literally a cancer in the locker room that we have to get him out in the clubhouse. Because it's such a... I imagine he was like a catalyst for a lot of the partying.
Yeah.
So
Lonnie Smith was another guy involved with that too. And he walked a darker path than that shit. Because to Keith's credit, he ended up getting clean on his own.
Yes.
And we'll talk about the trial kind of later. Whitey had even mentioned, he said he wasn't running out balls to first base. But what he did say was, I never saw him take a day off on defense. Which
I love that.
Which is such a Keith Hernandez, like testament to Keith Hernandez.
Yep.
So he's not. It's not like he sucks. Through 218 bats, he's hitting 284.
Oh yeah,
But Whitey wants to get rid of him. I don't know if they've traded Smith yet, but basically they get rid of all the cocaine guys on this team.
Well, Whitey's an old school fucking guy.
Yeah.
I bet he was probably like, "What is cocaine?"
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where it was like,
Whitey, it's the same color as your hair.
That's right. They're calling it Whitey in the locker room.
Yeah.
You got that Whitey?
You got that Whitey? What's everybody talking? They're a bunch of nose clams, and you can fill with buckets and dance the night away. I love you, Peter Nincompoop. I'll miss you.
Oh shit! They're stickers.
But so what they do to him, I think they intended to trade him where they traded him because of where this franchise was as far as competency. I think this was a dig.
Yes.
It's not like they traded him to the Giants where he's from. It's not like they traded him back to California in the American League.
They traded him within their own division.
Yeah.
So, like, they literally were like, we think this team is so bad, and we know that you're really good. We don't even think you're going to help them. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, improve so much that it would be... We don't even know if
he'll be the same Keith Hernandez as before.
That's true. He doesn't have his clams.
That's right. His nose is buckets of nose clams. Nobody parties like a jockey, Chris.
Oh, my God.
So he hits 280... I said he 284 and 218 at bats, so it's not like he sucks. Like, it's not like there's much of a dip in any of his production.
Yeah.
They traded him to the New York Mets, which was considered a death sentence at the time.
Well, he went from World Series champs to literally a team that almost lost 100 games.
I mean, no one wants to meet these Mets.
I think they lost like 96. So it's like they were second worst, I think. So it was literally like that. And
it was 81, I think Strawberry was the first pick.
Yep.
So I think 83 was when he was on the big club and he won Rookie of the Year. But what nobody knows about these Mets teams is we talked about in those, if you listen to our Dave Margolis episodes on the 86 Mets, we really kind of go into how they're kind of sneakily building this team.
Yes.
And how Hernandez is the perfect person to go there and be their captain and leader.
Veteran at this point with a World Series under his belt. Like he's played in a winning situation where they're like, oh yeah, let's just follow that example.
And he's also, almost like our Vinny Testaverde episode, he's seen the worst.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he's seen not necessarily not success as far as dregs on the field, but he's seen a lot of messed up stuff off of the field, which because his team is very young, it's helpful. The Cardinals, idiotically, don't ask for any of these prospects in return.
No, they got like
this is a washing machine trade, Chris.
They got like two pitchers,
Neil Allen and Rick Ownby,
that really don't do shit.
Yeah. But basically, he's finally clean. He has a new fresh start. He doesn't want to be in New York, though. He's talked about this out the gate.
Yes. He was very public about it. He was like, I considered retiring because...
He called his agent and he said, can I live on a deferred income?
Yeah.
Hey, you want to go to the Mets? No. This isn't Kurt Flood being a indentured servant.
No, this is...
Oh, God, don't make me play for the Mets.
Yeah, but luckily, it actually really worked out.
Oh, so it's perfect because the front office is actually headed by smart people like Frank Cashin. There is a great farm system, and his brother, he had talked about, his older brother Gary had told him, you don't know what the fuck they have here. Yeah. Understand what you have around here, because I think he would have been a free agent in 84 or 85. So it was those guys, and then Rusty Staub, their former first baseman, who kind of
was like,
he was the one who took him out around the town.
Yep.
Said, you can be a star here.
I know. I saw that where he was like, dude, this is New York. I know you lived in St. Louis, and they did really prove they were like, we are actually building something. So
yeah, in 95 games, I do want to say to finish up 83, because this is the year he quit doing little tootskis.
He stopped eating seafood.
Stopped eating seafood. I like that. Stopped eating clams.
Yep.
that he purchased with many numbers of green people from President times. Whatever that quote was,
Whatever
it was
Charlie
so good.
says there.
Yeah. Many hundreds of green people from President.
The Pittsburgh Pirate coming up. You guys want those nose crackers?
The parrot.
Yeah.
Guys, we're going to Three Rivers. I think we might play some baseball games, but we're going to Three Rivers. So in 84, heading into the season, he signed a 5-year, $8.4 million contract. In 84, he makes the All-Star team.
Golden Glove. I don't know if you saw that.
Silver bat.
Oh, he did have
a silver bat
because he
this
has
year.
2 silver bats, and that is so good. Just to be the best defensive player, and then on top of that, you're like, oh well, you're also the second best hitter.
Yeah, the best offensive player. He had 311, 15 dingers, 94 ribbies. Second in the MVP that year to Ryan Sandberg. Which and the Cubbies were the teams that had edged him out in the NL East that year.
Yep.
In 85, I did want to, before we get into, kind of how he did that season, this is the year he had to testify.
Yeah, so this is
the cocaine trials.
This is when everything kind of becomes public and you really understand, because this is before reporting on sports was so harsh. They would kind of cover shit up, so this is when everything came out. So all the rumors that you were hearing about why he got traded,
yeah,
this was like proof of all of it.
And he admitted to it on the stand. Like, he freely came out and was like, look, I did all of this stuff.
Outside of distribution. They were trying to catch him for...
Yeah.
Because, and this is what he was saying. He was just like, well, we would go buy a big-ass bag, and I would, give it. I wasn't...
Yeah.
It wasn't in what they were saying distribution was.
No, he's not a drug kingpin. It's
I
bought a bunch of cocaine. You guys want to hit the club?
He's not the parrot.
He's not the parrot.
We got the parrot.
We got him. Everyone, we got him.
We got him.
In prison, he's gonna have to fight the jumpsuit around it. So everyone knows where to get their cocaine.
But I do want to, because this becoming public, it kind of tarnishes his kind of reputation of what people kind of thought of him.
So there was also a little bit of drama mixed in, because he could have been suspended for a full season.
Yep.
But there was the deal where he had the deferred suspension, and then you had to do all this charity work.
Yeah, he had to
give money.
It was 10% of their salary to a drug program. It was a bunch of stuff.
Which to me, and what I think him and all of these other players who were wrapped up in it figured, yeah, I'll just do that.
Yeah.
Because it could have been so much worse.
Oh, yes. And especially that he was clean at that point by himself. There was all that stuff where you're like, we shouldn't suspend him for a year.
No, well, his dad wanted him to take the suspension.
Oh, yeah.
Because he didn't want him lorded over by Major League Baseball.
Mm-hmm.
And his brother, that caused a rift between his dad and his brother, because his brother's like, no, just keep playing. You're fine. As long as you're fine, keep playing. But in 85, hits 309, wins another Gold Glove, 91 RBIs. They almost catch St. Louis in the NL East that year.
And this is why it's such a great trade, because they literally are 1 and 2 for multiple years here, where you're like, oh, this is the rivalry that everybody wants. You trade a star to their rival, they actually become good.
You trade a star to the rival that you think will never come back to haunt you. That's the one thing.
That's exactly, yeah.
86, we've discussed it a ton. All-Star Gold Glove, win 108 games, hits 310, NL leading 94 walks, 13 dingers for Keith. He's an all. I mean, they're the best team in baseball.
Yes.
It's not close, but they get into the NLCS, and there is one former Met who has their number in Mike Scott with his very... Well, let's just say is very effective sinker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very effective. Some might even call it not on the level effective.
I like to call him the doctor.
Yeah,
because his balls are doctored.
He got a PhD in scuffing that baseball, allegedly.
What the hell is that? Vaseline,
Bardol,
Vagisil.
And sometimes I get a little jalapeno up my nose. It's not going.
The ump's watching me really close.
God. So they're in Game 6. Scott beats him twice. They're up 3-2, but Scott beats him twice. in games 1 and 4.
And he shuts them out in game 6 for like the first 6 innings.
Yeah, well, no. Scott's not pitching in game 6.
Okay.
The Mets, and they've talked about this, Keith included, we needed to win game 6 because Scott pitches game 7.
Yeah.
They can't. Going to game 7 is not an option for them. And in this game, I believe Bob Nepper is the pitcher, for the Astros. He is having a great game. Absolutely great game. They're up 3-0 in the top of the 9th. But our boy Lenny Dykstra leads off.
Our boy
hits a triple.
I'll tell you what's crazy is how much cocaine was still on this Mets team. That Keith wasn't, because you hear just Dykstra, who's the craziest man in baseball. Gooden, Strawberry, Darryl. Just a little tear. Yeah, but that's what I find so interesting. But because Keith really took this like captain kind of thing and took these guys to this,
they were saying, I saw in that 30 for 30 where he was like, Gary Carter thought he was the captain.
Yes.
But nobody, they're like, you're a great player, but it's Keith Hernandez.
Well,
and he's later named captain of the Mets.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. So Dykstra gets a triple, Mookie singles. Kevin Mitchell grounds out to advance the runners, and then Keith is up with doubles in Mookie.
Mm-hmm.
He doubles in Mookie to score the tying, and he scores the tying run on a Ray Knight sac fly in this game. They go all the way to 16 innings with, as far as, I think in the 14th, Houston tied it up on a Billy Hatcher dinger after a Backman single, and in the top of the 16th, they scored 3 runs. So they're up 6-3, but the Astros come all the way back and almost tie the game, but lose. They win the pennant. He wins the pennant with the Mets, which I think in 1983 he never thought was going to happen.
No, he considered retiring because he was just like, I don't want to play for this losing franchise.
Bunch of losers.
Goes to the World Series against the Sox. This is quite a famous series of events at this World Series.
People like to talk about Game 6, but it's Game 7 where Keith kind of is the hero of this game.
Yeah.
They're down, much like the Astros series, they're down 3-0 in the bottom of the 6th. The bases are loaded against Bruce Hurst, who would have been the MVP if Buckner, collected that ground ball. And on an 0-1 count, he hits his line drive single.
Yep.
With the bases chucked. They score 2 runs. And they tie the game by the end of the inning. And they win the game 8-5.
End up winning a World Series. But this is, to my point, he either starts rallies or he's literally the game tying. In almost all of these Cardinals and Mets runs where you're just like, oh, man, he was so clutch.
He was made for the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what? Nobody knows how to get to first base better than Keith Hernandez in a clutch situation.
That's true.
87's a bit of a down year. This is when Gooden's suspended for hurting his nose. They fight the Cardinals the whole way, but they just can't catch him.
Mm-hmm.
He has a career high 18 homers this year. Hits 290 with 89 RBIs. 88 is the last gasp, though, for Hernandez kind of in the Mets. He wins a Gold Glove.
How many is that?
I believe it's 11, Chris.
It's 11.
He won from 78 to 80.
11 consecutive Gold Gloves.
That's unbelievable.
And they said that, and this was there was like managers talking about him playing first base. They're like, "Oh, we don't bunt against the Mets." Like he is such a great identifier of when you're going to bunt that it's almost like giving them an out. He was so good at first base.
You're not going to bunt for a base hit.
No.
In fact, if you bunt, he might throw out both lead runners.
Yes.
If you want.
I'm just saying, like, they say that he probably is the best defensive first baseman,
He has some issues with his right hamstring, though.
I saw that.
He's kind of limited. They do end up winning 100 games and making the NLCS against the Dodgers. And in Game 4 at Shea, this is what completely changed the fortunes of this franchise. They're up 2-1 in the 9th inning. Doc Gooden is pitching against Mike Scioscia before his tragic nuclear power plant radiation accident. All they need to do, they're up 4-2 in this game. They're up 2-1 in this series. All they need to do is win this.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, for all intents and purposes, it's over. He gives up a 2-run dinger, and they lose in the 12th. Eventually, the Mets rally and they force a Game 7, but they end up losing. And that's pretty much it for Keith, because the next year he's only limited to 75 games. And in 1990, he signs with the Indians.
Yeah.
As a free agent.
And plays 45 games with them. So you could see his decline was kind of quick, but his batting kind of declined.
It's really unfortunate, because, God, if he played maybe 2 or 3 more seasons, he would have been a cinch for Cooperstown.
Oh, yeah.
I think he should be in based on his numbers and his defensive play.
That's my thing, is being the best at one position for over a decade, like so much, you know what I mean? Like, and then on top of that, he was a unbelievably clutch hitter who won 2 World Series. It's hard to not get him in that Hall of Fame.
11 Gold Gloves, 5 All-Star games, 2 silver bats, a batting title, an MVP, a co-MVP.
We'll call it an MVP.
I'm going to call it an MVP.
I want to.
Over 1,000 RBIs, over 1,000 walks, hit 296, career 296 hitter, over 1,100 runs.
Career 296, and didn't have a great couple of years when he started. So you look at his
prime.
He's hitting like 320.
Yeah. As we've brought up numerous times throughout this episode, after his career, he was in a very famous 2-part episode of Seinfeld titled The Boyfriend. He helped Jerry Seinfeld move, dated Elaine, and was part of a magic bullet theory, or a magic spit theory.
Keith Hernandez.
I'm Keith Hernandez. So it was McDowell. Also, another...
we were yelling at him for that. Whatever Kramer and Newman were doing was so ridiculous.
Nice game, pretty boy.
Yep.
Another thing he has in common with someone we've done an episode on, with Walt Clyde Frazier, advertised just for men.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't... Kind of remiss with Keith Hernandez, that mustache.
Oh, my God.
That's an iconic sports mustache.
It's such an 80s baseball mustache. It is so wonderful. I don't know if you read this, but in the trials, they actually tested his mustache for cocaine.
Did they really?
They were like,
man.
We heard this is where you hide it. Just start shaking it.
And it wasn't like silly, like Raleigh Fingers with the fucking handlebar. It was just like, this mustache does a lot of things.
Yep.
This is the Swiss Army knife of mustaches.
This is for the ladies.
Became
the commentator for the Mets now.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Which I've heard some of that, and I think he really is, like you were saying, a student of baseball where he has insight where you're like, oh, that was great.
Oh, yeah, definitely enjoyable. And like you can tell that this is what he was supposed to do.
Yep.
So, Keith Hernandez, everybody.